Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Field of 68's last call.
What's your go-to Applebee's order?
I don't go to Applebee's. We actually call it Crapplebee's, to be honest.
Who's the better team right now, Creighton, Marquette, or UConn?
What are you doing? What is that? Pray for fans. Oh, come on, Zach. Here we go. It's last call. It's last call. It's last call. The lights have come up, but we're still on for a half hour. Grab a drink, sit down, and talk some college hoops with us on Stadium. I'm John Fanta. Chris Mack is here. Terrence Oglesby is here. We're with you for the next half hour exclusively on Stadium. Last call is the best call, where we're going to take your questions and we're going to give you the best answers we can. These questions can be about anything. They could be about basketball. They could be about life. They could be about food. They could be about holiday shopping. Let's get to it. We start with Extra Ducks 4. He asks, and I'll start with you, Terrence. What team not named Purdue finishes highest in the Big Ten?
Okay. You know what? I'm not. I feel like this is a bounce back season for Chris Holtmann and Ohio State.
Nice.
I feel like they have some good wins over an Alabama team at a neutral site against a Santa Clara team that's done well in the portal, and they didn't just beat them; they drubbed them. I think this Ohio State team. They have a guy in Bruce Thornton who might as well be playing outside linebacker for Ohio State's football team. Like, he's built like that, 6'2", 220 pounds. Coach Mack, you know how good Holtmann is at putting his guys in spots. I think he's a terrific coach, and being in the Big Ten in a league that, let's be honest, hasn't had the most stellar non-conference so far, I feel like they could finish in that top third for sure, maybe even the top three of that league. I like Ohio State for not just them, but I thought not just Bruce Thornton. Roddy Gale has stepped up in a big way. Jamison Battle, the transfer from Minnesota, was one of my favorite players on that team when I saw them a couple of years ago. Obviously, they didn't have great success. Jamison Battle needed to be a second or third guy. I think now that he is being able to play off of some playmakers, that's a massive win for him. You've seen it in his production, and he's a much better piece to a team with a lot of really good players. So this Ohio State team, revenge season. Especially, they need a little revenge after what happened last weekend at the Big House.
Hey, that's a great pick, though. I think that, obviously they played really well last weekend, to do what they did to Alabama, and then follow it up with a team that maybe doesn't have the name recognition in Santa Clara, and drub them. And I think those were really good 2 days for Chris' team's confidence. They didn't have the type of season that Holtmann's teams usually have a year ago. And, sometimes when you're coming off the heels of that type of year, that's sort of anomaly, you want to have some early success so the guys start to believe again. And I think Chris really found that last weekend, his team did. I think Michigan State for me. I think that, he's obviously, Izzo's going to play one of the toughest schedules in the country. Year in, year out in the non-conference, but I bet on his team getting better as the season progresses. I think Jaden Akins and Hogarth, those guys will figure it out. He's going to make them figure it out, and they're going to continue to grind as the season goes on. They're going to be a much better rebounding team than maybe they've showed early on in some of these elite games. But again, I don't know if that's so much of a hey, Michigan State, they're going to do it. I just think the Big Ten's maybe what it's been the last few years, but I can see Michigan State being the second best team in the Big Ten when it's all said and done.
I like the Ohio State pick more because I think that there's more upside there with that sophomore class. Thornton has only gotten better. Roddy Gale is special, and now Zed Key's in a role that fits him more. Jamison Battle, guys, is experienced. He's a winner and wants to win. He makes winning plays. He was part of a losing program. But I think he'll really help them in a variety of areas because he's been through the ringer and he's been through a lot. I like Ohio State. I like that pick, T.O. I want to pick Illinois, but the point guard questions the point guard questions, though, that they had entering the season still exist. I mean, when you look at their numbers, it's not like they've got a firm answer at point guard. Now, if Marcus Domask and Luke Goody and Ty Rodgers can keep coming along, that's a good sign. But it can't just be the Terrence Shannon show. And I still feel like right now Illinois needs Terrence Shannon to beat a really good team or a great team. They need Shannon to be outstanding to win. And it's just a lot. Like when you get into March or when you get into these conference races, you got to be able to win in different ways. And that's why I like the picks of Ohio State. And you got to think Michigan State, after going through some real tough times early, they'll be better off, and Tom will get them going. But I'll tell you this much: they only have one non-conference chance left, a marquee one, and that's against Baylor in Detroit, who, by the way, looks damn good. Let's get to the next question here. Our next question in the chat, all right, comes in from Sean. Sean asks, could Xavier miss the NCAA tournament? Now, before we answer your question, Sean, let's give a shout out, okay, to Oakland, the Golden Grizzlies, head coach Greg Kampe, who is the longest tenured Division I coach, active one in college basketball now. Greg Kampe's Golden Grizzlies go into the Cintas Center and beat Xavier tonight. A statement win from an Oakland team that had come close a couple of times, had played Ohio State and Illinois tough. Tonight, Oakland wins 78-76 over Xavier. How about this line? 28 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds for Trey Townsend. The 6'6" junior was terrific. Let's shout out Coach Kampe in Oakland. They win it. But with that in mind, guys, Chris Mack, Xavier, NCAA tournament, could they miss it?
I mean, they could. They looked good against St. Mary's. I thought they'd come back and I thought they'd handle Oakland. I can see Oakland's style. I watched the game and their chaotic zone. Although Xavier didn't turn the ball over, I just felt like their shots were a little rushed. But having said that, Xavier didn't lose on the offensive end, and Sean's teams always defend. And again, when you're dealing with so many new pieces, guys coming from all over, from different colleges, and you're trying to add in, international freshmen, it's not going to happen in August and September. I mean, this is just a longer molding of your talent, and it's just going to take a little bit of time. The good thing is he's in a league that gives him an opportunities where you're playing UConn 2 or 3 times, you're playing Marquette 2 or 3 times, so he'll have an opportunity to, earn an NCAA bid. Villanova 2 or 3 times. You have teams that are certainties, in my opinion, on making the tournament. So could they? Yes. Do I think they will? No, I would bet on them making the NCAA tournament if I had to.
I would bet to the contrary. I don't think they're going to make the NCAA tournament. I think it was such a massive blow when Fremantle's done for the year, and then Hunter's done for the year, and then you have all these new pieces, and then I love Sean as much as the next guy. I think he's a heck of a coach. However, you are subject to what you can put on the floor, and when your best 2 post players are hurt, that's what happens. You're going to get beat by teams that have some of these post players that can score. That's what happened tonight, and Oakland's good. Rocket Watts transfer from Michigan State. He's a good player. Townsend goes berserk because he's playing against freshman bigs. Those things are going to happen. And Chris, I was wondering, is that Oakland zone the most frustrating thing I've ever watched? It reminded me a little bit of Pastner's zone, to where they brought the bottom wings up, but they switched everything so much at the top of the key. It was hard for me to really keep up as I was watching too.
Yeah, I mean, it was. It's really evident that they play passing lanes. They let you drive the ball towards the elbows, and then they have a guy picking up that doesn't allow the ball to get all the way to the rim. But it makes ball reversals and quick ball reversals, which a lot of times beat 2-3 zones and zones of that nature. It makes it choppy, and I felt like Xavier took pretty good care of the basketball. They didn't turn it over more than 10 or 11 times. I felt like when guys were going to shoot, they looked a little rushed, like who's the next guy coming over to challenge, and some of those passes from the wing to the corner couldn't necessarily be made, and a couple of freshmen left their feet. But at the end of the day, it's the offensive end wasn't what hurt them. They couldn't stop Trey Townsend. I mean, he he played bully ball with so many different guys.
We got to go to break. We'll be back with more of your questions after this. This is Last Call on Stadium. Welcome back to Last Call on Stadium. John Fanta, Terrence Oglesby, Chris Mack with all of you. We're taking your questions right now. Andrew is with us next. Andrew asks tonight, who's winning Syracuse versus LSU? Really interesting game in the ACC-SEC Challenge. It is later tonight. It is at 7 Eastern time. Terrence Oglesby, this game is at the Dome. It's at the JMA Wireless Dome. It'll always be the Carrier Dome. Who's going to win?
Man, that's a tough one. That's two teams trying to figure it out. I do think that Will Baker at LSU, he's been a good pickup for them. I love Coach McMahon. I think he's an awesome human. However, that dome is not easy to play. Syracuse has so much talent. J.J. Starling's a really talented kid. Judah Mintz is a sleeper pick for All-American, depending on how Syracuse does. He has that kind of talent. And I just feel like Benny Williams is starting to come along under Red Autry. He's a super talented kid from IMG, never really got his footing under the previous regime. And now you can kind of see spurts of, hey, man, this kid's really good. I think Syracuse wins at home for no other reason than they're at home. And I just think they're really talented.
Terrence, do you ever play at the Carrier Dome?
They were still in the Big East when I was playing.
I knew that. I just didn't know if you ever played a non-conference game or anything like that.
No, never did.
So I'd been in college basketball, I don't know, 20-something years, had never been to the Carrier Dome. And we played there my first year at Louisville, and I think we lost 412-15, something like that. God damn, we got our ass kicked. And it was the most bizarre feeling. We had a guy that wasn't a great shooter on our team, Quan Four, and he hit 2 threes to end the game with like a minute and a half left. That probably cut the lead from 40 to about 30, 34 in the last couple minutes. It made me feel about this much better. That's a weird place to play. Having said that, watching the other night, I don't know if I've ever seen Syracuse play man-to-man in the last 15, 20 years. That was wild to watch. Red's putting his spin on, and it'll be interesting because, both of those teams are trying to sort of get back to respectability and who they've been in the past. So I'm with Terrence. I'm going to go with Syracuse at home in the weird Carrier Dome.
It's so weird to play in a football stadium. We played at the one in Atlanta for an ACC tournament. And it is, you want to talk about, big arena syndrome or whatever it is, where the goal looks shorter. It's a difficult environment because there's nothing behind those backboards, nothing. And it changes your whole dynamic of how you see and everything.
Yeah, and like on the baseline, you're right. The bleachers or the stands go way back, but on the one sideline, it's pushed all the way up to the end zone. So there is a backing on that sideline where the benches are. And then on the other sideline, it feels like it goes for 300 yards, like it's 2 or 3 buildings across. You know, it's just it's an odd deal. And good luck, LSU.
Look, if you're looking at this from an analytical standpoint, and it's not that, a game at the Carrier Dome is not that, LSU is a better team today. But you go on the road, guys, Syracuse is shooting 28% from 3. I got to think that starts to
Because they're playing all home games.
Well, yeah, right.
Because they're playing all home games. Terrence just explained it.
You know, this comes down to an LSU team that lost early to Nichols and Dayton, narrowly to Dayton.
Yeah.
And how much have they gotten better from that? And I think it really comes down to Will Baker having a good night for them. Right now, offense is a little hard to come by for the Tigers. Jordan Wright and Will Baker got to do a lot of it. They're not a great scoring team. But for Syracuse, like, at the end of the day, Judah Mintz has to show up and be the best player on the floor, and Chris Bell and J.J. Starling have to complement. I like Syracuse narrowly. So we're all on Syracuse, which means LSU will win. Next question here. What's the most – okay, this is a great question. I mean, an absolutely fantastic question. Chris Mack, what's the most underrated in-state rivalry in the country?
Underrated.
Yeah, because I feel like Xavier Cincinnati is properly rated. People respect.
Well, and that's what I'm going to say. That's obviously well documented. You know, the fights, the intensity, the rivalry. Like, that game's on national television every year. Like, I don't feel like that's an underrated one. I'm trying to think. Man, Terrence, you got anybody? I'm going to pull a Terrence. I'm not picking one until I can think of something.
I can pick one. I can pick one. All right, I'm going to pick one right now. It's Seton Hall and Rutgers. And obviously I'm biased, but I'm going to tell you why. This game has a ton of lead up to it. First off, it's a Catholic school versus a state school. So there's a lot of debate there, and there's a huge difference in the way that the two schools operate. One, Rutgers is running on a Big Ten budget. Okay, they're running on a Big Ten budget in which they have football, and they're the state's university. So if you're asking the New Jersey state government who they're going to side with, you know they're going to side with the governor goes to this game, and I'd like to think he's wearing red underwear. Rutgers is tough. Seton Hall's also tough. So get ready for a street fight. I mean, this is a game that's just nasty. It's physical. This game also has a banquet attached to it. They're doing a banquet for the third straight year. I'm emceeing it this year. Guys, they're bringing current players from the teams, like a boxing weigh-in. The players are going to be on opposite sides of the table taking fan questions. Fans engage with them 2 nights before the game. So this is heated. This is bragging rights. It is Jersey pride. And the reason why it's underrated to me is, let's face it, in the past, at times, these two programs, Seton Hall and Rutgers, have actually had consistency in the past decade, for the most part. But guys, they're not always great, and they both could miss the NCAA tournament this year. But there's one game that matters. There's one game that matters. And it's for Rutgers beating Seton Hall, for Seton Hall beating Rutgers. Last year, Seton Hall did not have a particularly good year. They went into Rutgers and won. And not many teams inside that building. Seton Hall, Rutgers, underrated. T.O., you got any? Mac, you got one?
Yeah, Clemson, South Carolina is going to be a sneaky good game this year. Both teams currently 5-0. Neither team has really played anybody. I gave South Carolina 25, so suck on that, Gamecocks. It is a real rivalry down here. People don't realize
it. Do the Memphis Tigers, do they play Tennessee anymore? Or
That's a good one.
Series been killed?
I don't know if they clipped that or not.
Kenny and Coach Bowman got into it and stuff. And the other one I'll tell you about is obviously not high majors is Kent State and Akron. They hate each other. And,
that's a great one.
That's a Hatfield McCoy for you right there. You know that, Banta. You should know that. Right around the corner.
Yeah, you get those two teams hate each other. You get some of those MAC ones, like when Siena and Iona play. That's
Yep.
got bad blood to it. That's fun. There's a bunch of them. This is last call coming up. The last of your questions. Welcome back to Last Call on Stadium. John Fanta, Terrence Oglesby, Chris Mack. We're taking your questions. Here we go. David says, David Bentling, what conference needs the ACC-SEC challenge more? T.O.
In my mind, it's got to be the ACC. You can make some noise. You can make some noise here by winning this challenge. And even if you do, you could, like when ACC was playing the Big Ten Challenge and they would win X amount of years, it didn't matter at the end of the year. Nobody even looked at it. I think that's crazy. These are all the teams against all the teams, and I think this challenge makes much more sense than the ACC Big Ten Challenge was, simply because of proximity. I think it's, these are rivaling fan bases. These are a lot of the same states, and they're close, and there's some animosity between the two leagues. I think from a basketball perspective, where was it 10 years ago when the SEC decided they were going to invest heavily in basketball? You're seeing the results of that now. And the ACC has always been looked at as the conference up until recently. So, and I think the ACC, in order to kind of take that step back to where they want to be from a basketball perspective, they need this more than the SEC does.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Terrence. I feel like, if you'd asked the question 10 years ago, it probably wouldn't have been worth answering. But,
Yeah.
The way that the ACC has been over the last 3 to 5 years, quite honestly, I'm not saying they need it, but it certainly, to me, it's a lot more important for the ACC that they show up and play well and represent their conference better than they have maybe getting to the tournament the last several years. For sure, the ACC.
Here's how I look at it, all right? I agree with you guys on the ACC. To me, if you're the ACC, all right, it would behoove you. I'll use the word behoove. It would behoove you to win 2 of these 3. Miami at Kentucky, Tennessee at Carolina, Duke at Arkansas. You can't go 0 for 3. Okay? You got to get 1. I think Duke's pulling that off. There's a lot of games between level competition, right? And it's forgivable if some of those teams fall. That NC State Ole Miss game now has me intrigued. Clemson at Alabama has me intrigued. But if Clemson falls, they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. If they were to win, they would pull off that'd be a bigger win for Clemson than it would be for Alabama, because for me, they're going on the road to Tuscaloosa. They're proving, they're backing it up. For Duke, it's about showing that, you are one of the better teams in the country and doing it. I think the most important game in this challenge is actually Tennessee, Carolina, because those teams feel like that they're in around the same area code. And Terrence, I think you picked Tennessee, right?
Yes.
And I get that. But Tennessee struggles to score. Carolina's on their home court. Carolina played Villanova really, really tough. They had
Yep.
Carolina had a good week in Atlantis. Back it up.
They did. Yep.
Come back home and back it up. If you're Armando Bacot and you're Ingram, and the Cormac Ryan, I mean that was brutal, no doubt about it. But if you're Bacot,
My man missed a free throw and sprained both ankles. I've never seen it.
Did you see that, Mac?
Yeah.
It's bad.
Freak.
Most unlucky thing I've ever seen.
Man, that was bad. All right, next we got time for maybe one more question, then we get to toast. Thoughts on Florida, quickly. Any thoughts on Florida? They played Baylor in the NIT championship game and lost narrowly, but Walter Clayton, Tyrese Samuel, T.O., any thoughts?
I think Tyrese Samuel is talented. I really like Walter Clayton. Riley Kugel's a draft pick. I think a lot of it hinges on if Micah Handlockton comes back and is able to protect the rim at a high level. I think he's talented. I actually coached the kid. Great kid, shot blocker, rebounder. They're going to need him to come back to compete in the SEC. But I think they're better this year than they were last.
I mean, Florida hasn't necessarily played a yeoman schedule, but they waxed Florida State now. Waxed. They were up like 35 points at one point. So I think Florida's a good team. I think that they're going to have their hands full in the SEC. But I'm with Terrence, man. They're talented, and I'm a believer in the Florida Gators.
I am too. No Micah Handlockton, and they did compete really well against Baylor. All right, toast of the night. Chris Mack, who are you toasting?
This guy won 5 games a year ago. And I didn't graduate from there, but I played there. The Evansville Purple Aces.
Here we go.
Oh, yeah.
Look at
that jersey.
We're 6-0.
There we go.
Still fits. If you ask if I ever wore the sleeves, there it is.
That is big time, Chris Mack.
David
you
Ragland.
threw a couple punches. You threw a couple punches in that.
5-27. Last year, they are 6-0. The Evansville Purple Aces.
Good for the Purple Aces. T.O., 10 seconds to toast somebody. Go.
I'm drinking to Evansville for that shirt. That shirt alone. That's the only reason I'm drinking for it.
And a toast to 2 people. Greg Campy and Oakland.
Yep.
They beat Xavier. Amazing win. And a toast to UConn. They break the NCAA all-time record with a 24th straight win by double digits over a non-conference opponent. That does it for us on Last Call. For Chris Mack and the Purple Ace Evansville. Throw that jersey one more time. For T.O., I'm John Fanta.